Hey folks, in this video I'm going to show how to create, compile, and run a basic C program using CLion on Linux. So here I am with CLion. In this case I've just started it and we're kind of at the main screen. So our first step is going to be to create a new project. So I'll click this over here. Now you have a few options here. The one we're going to want to use is the first one under the C category, so C executable. So this is if we basically want a sample program that will be, written in C. Now there is one option here that we could customize, which is the version of C. You'll notice here it says language standard, and there are three options: C99, C90, and C11. The one I'm going to stick with is C99. That's kind of the most common version of C that is out there. These are basically older or newer versions, but we'll just stick with 99, which also happens to be the default. Be aware that programs that are written in one version of C may not compile in other versions. Alright, let's go ahead and click Create and start our project. Notice it's called just Untitled. I didn't really bother changing the name. Whenever you see the word Untitled on the screen, what that will be is basically the name of the project that our source file is part of. Alright, so I get some tips. We'll go ahead and close that. Don't really need that right now. And we'll basically be looking at a very, very simple hello world. Right? So printf hello world. If I compile and run this, I should just get hello world back. All right, so I'm starting my IDE. Maybe we'll just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click this over here, which is our run button. We'll do some dependencies building, and there we go. You can see over there, hello world got displayed. Maybe I'll do something else here a little bit. Let me actually try out the debugger for a second. I'm going to say that I have a variable called x and store 10 into it, and I'll have a variable called y and I'll store x plus 2 into it. And then maybe we can display that value later on as well. Let's see. We'll just print out y afterwards. Alright, so the reason I want to add this little bit of code is so that we can see something a little bit different, and also so that we can try using the debugger for a second. So it's pretty standard. I'm clicking over here to put in a breakpoint, press the little bug icon, does the compilation, starts to run it, and you can see we've paused here on this line. So we're kind of waiting here. X hasn't been run. Now I've run it, so now you can see it's 10. If I hover over it, I'll see the same thing. Have the standard kind of variable windows down below. We can go on, do whatever we want, right? So you can see Y, 12, and then we'll print out stuff. And then we're done. All right. We don't really need the assembly. Let's go back over the program. So yeah, that's kind of how to use CLion. It's pretty straightforward, assuming you've got it installed correctly. The one thing I do kind of want to touch on really quick is this file over here. So this was kind of automatically open, cmakelist.txt. So just as an FYI, what this is basically a file that describes your project, right? So we had a couple settings, not too many. This is kind of where that's kept track. So somehow, right, the idea is that internally, I the compiler, right, needs to know a few things about your program in order to know how to compile it. And that's stored here in this file. It's actually associated with something called CMake, which is a build tool. Basically, it's a tool that can look at your system, look at some parameters, and basically figure out what are the correct commands to execute in the terminal in order to compile your program. So here are the settings it uses. This you shouldn't have to tinker with. You saw that our program already compiled, but just so you guys know, I want to talk about a few things here. So first of all, this line is kind of a little bit boilerplate. Basically what this says is, in order to use this as a kind of an intermediate between your program and the compiler, you need to have this CMake 3.17 installed. Okay, so basically it's a requirement. Then what we have is basically a little line here called project that tells us the name of the project, and then also that it's in C. Okay. So that's what that line there is doing. Then you can see over here, this is actually, it says set. It's kind of like setting a variable. Notice it says CMake standard 99. That's back from when we created the project and we set it to be C99. All right. The last thing here is basically it deciding, what source code it should take and use to build the main binary file. This right again is the name of our project, and well, this is the name of our file, right? So this is going to basically be compiled to create the untitled project and the binary associated with it. Alright, so that was just really quick. Typically you don't have to tinker with this, but just in case you wonder what it is, that's kind of the basics of it. Alright, so this is our C program. If we want, right, we can do whatever we want now. It's a pretty typical IDE. Hopefully most of the commands are kind of familiar, coming from anything that's kind of a modern IDE. And yeah, that should do it. So at this point you should have an idea basically how to create and run a small C program in CLion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video.